Good morning.
Good morning.
Good morning. All right, I'm going to jump in. Welcome to Responsible AI, the podcast for the AI Forum. We are turning the tables today. I'm Rebecca Staffel, your Responsible AI producer, and today I'm going to interview AI Forum founder Alex Alben. Hi, Alex.
Hi, Rebecca. Nice to be with you here today.
You get to be the answerer instead of the questioner today.
I appreciate the role reversal.
Great. So, Alex, recently you gave a presentation to executives at Paramount Pictures about artificial intelligence and its implications for the legal world. Why was it important to address that audience?
Well, I was asked to address these executives at the invitation of uh, somebody who I know in the marketing area in Paramount. And this group gets together every month to talk about salient issues that are affecting the media industry. And a lot of what I've been exploring lately in artificial intelligence and other issues is having a dramatic impact on the media industry. As you know, there were two very prominent labor actions in the last few years, one that was brought by the actors, one that was brought by the Writers Guild, that affect the way they have to navigate AI usage in television and in film. That's just one of the many issues that's facing this industry. And of course, these are professionals who are trained in their discipline. They have very specific skills relating to motion picture production and entertainment and animation. And yet, when a new technology comes around, such as AI, they recognize that they need to come up to speed pretty quickly on how that technology might affect their business. In that context, they invited me to come and share some thoughts with them on what I'm seeing in the AI industry and how it is affecting businesses in general and the entertainment industry in specific.
Fantastic. And sometimes I think folks are reading the papers but maybe not diving in as deeply, and how great for you to bring that to them. And your presentation emphasizes the importance of understanding really how LLMs work, large language models. Can you elaborate on the distinction between an LLM and traditional search engines and why that's crucial from a legal perspective?
Sure, I'd be happy to chat with you about that. The public in general doesn't have expertise in the one of the aspects of artificial intelligence, which is the presence of what we call LLMs or large language models. The most popular and famous one is Chat GPT, which since its public debut about 2 years ago has revolutionized the way millions of people conduct their lives, their personal lives, their social lives, and in the business world as well. But no one really is required to take a course in the basics of LLMs, just as we weren't required to take a course on the basics of the internet or the basics of the cloud. These technologies come upon us in waves, and we are expected to adapt to them. At UCLA, where I teach a course, I do spend some time on two very important table setting issues. The first is trying to define what we mean when we talk about AI. AI means different things to different people. Various aspects of AI, artificial intelligence, have been around for decades. Various ones are fairly new. When I address a group, I like to talk about the fact that AI can mean robotics, AI can mean natural language models, AI can mean machine learning. AI can mean pattern recognition, facial recognition, and associated techniques. And all of these things are different. So, as we start any discussion, we should be trying to clarify what we mean by artificial intelligence. The focus of this particular discussion with the executives was on large language models. A large language model is a computer program. It is a very evolved computer program that has scaled uh, billions of times to incorporate a very sophisticated ability to understand the relationship between words. Just sticking to the English language has been around for a long time. And it has been digitized since the internet age, let's say for the last 30 years. And therefore, there's a lot of material to incorporate. And the first large language models started to incorporate large blocks of language in various forms, whether it was in writing, whether it was in a book, a radio broadcast, a film, some other form of media that captured words. The model mimics human speech and mimics human comprehension to the extent that it can talk to you. And that's why I think most people feel, oh, this is somewhat like a human brain with a machine interface.
Mm-hmm.
It's not a human brain.
Yeah.
It is a mathematical brain that is drawing vector type relationships between words and phrases. I think most people's model of an LLM, and it's not surprising that this is their conception, is that there's a huge library somewhere of files, digital files. They're all stacked up on the shelves of this library. And some of those shelves have the works of William Shakespeare, and some of them have the works of Marcel Proust, and some of them have Spanish textbooks. And all of these things are filed away so that when we ask a question of an LLM, we are accessing specific files. That is not the behavior of an LLM. An LLM is analyzing the words in the question that is put to it and building relationships that make sense to it as if it is conversing with you. For example, if you were to say, who is Juan Soto, the baseball player? The language model would then understand that there's a word called Juan, there's a word called Soto, there's a word called baseball, there's a word called player, and these words have relationships to each other. And it also knows that every time or every millionth time somebody has asked who is Juan Soto, that there's a response that gives a biography of this person that's based on another set of words that correspond with the phrase, who is Juan Soto? That's a very simple example of what an LLM is doing in terms of retrieving data based on the mathematical relationship between the different words. The reality is that these large language models, which include Gemini and Cohere and Perplexity and others, have become so adept at building responses to language queries that it truly seems like we are dealing with an intelligent being that is responding to the questions that we are asking. That's the marvel that I think many of us experience when we are in a relationship with an LLM.
That's why I always say please and thank you to the AI.
I think that's a long-winded way of saying that when I do talk on the subject, I try to define these terms for people so that they have a basic understanding. And I think it also clears up some misunderstandings about what a large language model is that have popped up in the discussion. And that's also important for people to know about.
And why is it important from a legal perspective?
Yes, because a lot of the entertainment industry and other industry are based on the production of content. Entertainment certainly is based on words, pictures, photos, images, and sounds. And all of these are subject to copyright protection in the United States and in other places around the world. The basic food stuff for an LLM is to absorb lots of different types of content. And that's why I made the analogy earlier to this giant library file, so that when an LLM is trained on content, it reads the content and then builds its mathematical model based on the relationship between the words. Under copyright law, someone is not allowed to copy a work without the consent of the author. And so, if in fact large language models were keeping billions of copies of all literary works known to mankind, that would be a massive copyright violation.
Got it.
But that is not the behavior of the computer program. The computer program, as I said, is building this very complex mathematical model. The content industry, particularly newspapers, seem to believe that based on certain queries of an LLM, the LLM will generate an answer that might incorporate so much of a copyrighted work that there is an unauthorized copy being made. There's a suit pending right now from the New York Times against Google and OpenAI and others that make claims along these lines. There was a lawsuit that was just disposed of in New York about a month ago, where the judge ruled that the behavior of the large language model was not to make copies of the underlying copyrighted works. And she did not see a reason to hold the LLMs guilty of copyright infringement. The overall point is that this is a very new area of law where we are testing the limits of copyright law and where we are trying to fit what an LLM does into this model of what is a copy and what is an unauthorized copy. And can you use existing copyrighted works to train a mathematical model? These are the fundamental questions that we are all struggling with at the moment.
You mentioned in your presentation that AI can perpetuate existing societal biases. Can you give an example of how this might manifest in a legal context and what steps can be taken to mitigate such risks?
Yeah, it's very important to understand that an LLM is only as good as the data that goes into the large language model. If we train a model on data that is inaccurate or biased, the outputs of the model are going to reflect inaccuracies or biases. For example, if we showed the large language model a photo of a cat and said that it was a raccoon, the large language model would then respond, yes, I see that raccoon when it sees the image of the cat. That is inaccurate because the model has been trained poorly on bad data. Because LLMs have absorbed so many vast repositories of written content, spoken content, pictures, we don't exactly know what's inside of them. And that is also a mystery of this new technology. So, given that we don't know what exactly is inside each of these models or what data it has been trained on, I think we do have to assume that the biases that exist in our current society are reflected in the way these models have been trained. I think that the very first step that lawmakers and others have taken wisely is to make sure that we're not making automated decisions based on the machines.
Mm-hmm.
That, especially when they are dealing with important questions involving people, such as jobs and housing and equal opportunities, that we not simply put this up to a computer program and ask for a definitive answer. In many cases, the laws or policy guidance are requiring that there should be a human review of a decision, even if the decision has been suggested by a computer program. I totally agree that in certain cases this is appropriate. And also, to the extent possible, we want to make sure that the training data that is used in a particular model does not come from a source that is biased. And this is going to be an ongoing challenge because these models continue to grow and absorb new information. And this is a constant problem that we are going to have where we have to build in some safeguards into the construction of these models.
Yeah, it sounds like a concerted effort from a group of bad actors could affect what you're going to get back out of the system.
Right. And I think that the question for lawyers might be, do we need new laws to deal with
Mm-hmm.
this new technological reality? Or do we have sufficient laws on the books already to prevent discrimination in various ways and simply need to be smart about how we apply those laws to automated decisions or other kinds of decisions that are generated or suggested by artificial intelligence?
California seems to be at the forefront of the AI regulation in the US. What are some key provisions of those new California laws and how are they impacting practice?
California has, in the last year or two, passed a very interesting, somewhat random set of laws regarding artificial intelligence. Some of those laws deal with anti discrimination, and those are appropriate, even as I commented. I'm not sure that they are strictly necessary given existing law. Other laws are new regarding the use of deep fakes in political advertising. Um, it might already have been illegal to create fictional images and lies in political advertising. But if you deploy artificial intelligence to do so, this new set of laws directly addresses that scenario for the state of California. There are also a set of new laws in California that are concerned about the privacy of certain kinds of data. For example, neural data. When you observe the way a human brain is working, those brain waves and the patterns that are captured by machines are certainly personally identifiable information. And the state of California in the last month did pass a law clarifying that those neural image information is falls under the California Consumer Privacy Act that was passed in 2018. Now, I think a reasonable judge might have determined that such personally identifiable information was already covered by the California privacy law. But this new law makes it absolutely clear that neural imaging does fall under this law. The California privacy law enables an individual to find out what information a company or organization has about them, to make corrections to that data, and to request that that data not be used or not be sold, rented, or shared by that organization. In this way, I think we're seeing a variety of different uh, legislative approaches to AI. To me, this seems somewhat scattered at the moment as we
That's what I
are
was asking. Use
trying,
the word random.
right? We are trying to identify what the real problems are uh, that the technology creates and that are not covered by existing law. And I encourage my students, and I know my peers are really actively looking at the technology to see if we do require new regulation at this stage of the game.
And looking ahead, how do you, so speaking of your students and education, how do you see AI shaping legal education in the coming years?
It's going to be fascinating to see how the adoption of AI plays out in the legal education space. Law deals with words, and in a sense, your training as a lawyer is based on your training in a very specific set of words relating to laws. The fact is that AI is incredibly good at understanding legal statutes, reading legal cases, and and researching similar fact patterns. These are all things that a law student and a new lawyer are trained to do. This means that AI can be used to accelerate learning quite a bit. In the old-fashioned analog days, a law student would go to a library and research how many times a case is mentioned in other cases that are in the book. And that task might take minutes or it might take hours. And today, with various legal tools, that process can be done in a matter of seconds.
Seconds.
That was the impact of digitization and search. When you add AI, you add an element of intelligent search that is really able to look at more complex patterns and also develop material that is responsive to specific tasks. For example, one of the things that lawyers do is generate questions based on a case. We call this the discovery phase of a case. A new attorney might spend their entire first few years at a law firm simply generating questions for discovery. A human takes a certain amount of time to read and write and review material. and that time is well compensated in the context of a law firm. And this is part of the business model of law firms. If you can do that same type of task, such as generating questions about a case to be posed to the other side in a fraction of the time, then you are going to save a lot of time for your own staff, and you're going to enable a much faster discovery process. We're already seeing this on the ground in law firms. The tools that are available to attorneys and paralegals and others enable them to generate thousands of different kinds of legal documents in a matter of seconds. And that's revolutionizing the practice of law. Now we have to say, what are the relevant skills that a new lawyer needs in order to navigate this new environment? Do new lawyers need to be trained in the use of LLMs? I think the answer is pretty clear that yes, they need to be trained in the use of LLMs. Um, do law firms need to be careful about exposing sensitive and confidential information to LLMs? And again, the answer is yes. Law firms need to be very careful about exposing confidential client information, just as they always have been under an obligation to keep such information confidential. They need to keep that information confidential if there is a possibility of exposing it to an LLM. And so we're going to need to analyze each part of the practice of law and try to understand how artificial intelligence is going to impact that practice area.
And the way things are moving, do you think that AI moves from being a terrific researcher and discovery partner to eventually predicting legal outcomes? How would you use it that way?
Well, lawyers and legal scholars have speculated for some time that a robot is going to be able to decide a legal case based on facts that are presented to it.
Mm-hmm.
There was a law review article uh, written called Judge Robots by a professor at UCLA a few years ago. And it basically entertained the scenario that people would agree to submit their disputes to robots if the robots could be fair, unbiased, and cheaper than a judge or an arbitrator. Um, this isn't an issue so much, I think, of understanding of law or the capability of robots. This is more a question of trust. At
Mm-hmm.
what point are people who are in a dispute going to say, we trust this machine to come up with a fair and unbiased answer? And when that level of trust is eventually reached, then for certain kinds of disputes, we will see that uh, people will agree to submit them to the robot for arbitration. I don't think that's going to happen in the immediate future. It certainly should not happen in cases that involve very important aspects of human life, such as family law. But perhaps in minor cases and small claims amounts, it will make sense to have your case quickly and fairly disposed of in an automated way, as opposed to a time consuming and expensive process where most of the people involved are not happy with the outcome.
This does go back to what you talked about earlier about understanding how the LLM is being trained, I suppose. So if I'm submitting myself to the judgment of Judge Robot, I want to make sure that that model is based on what cases that I trust or law that I trust.
Can we pause one sec?
Mhm.
The author of that law review article that I referred to earlier was Eugene Volokh, who was on the faculty of UCLA, and he is now at the Hoover Institution. Um, so there are a variety of companies, including one that I have been involved in called Theo AI, that thinks that artificial intelligence is ready to predict the outcomes of certain types of cases based on their fact patterns. This is an area that has use to uh, people involved in disputes, to law firms that are thinking about taking cases, to parties that are involved in the financing of legal disputes, and many others in the industry. And we're just at the beginning of this process right now, and I think it's a very exciting time to be involved in this field because uh, we are trying to leverage this new technology in a way that I think really makes decisions more data driven and does eliminate human bias uh, from the process.
Fantastic. Thank you. So, just to sum up, how did your Paramount executives feel after they heard this?
We really had a wide-ranging discussion. Um, People, I think, have a lot of ideas about how to use artificial intelligence in their jobs. These people are creative and know that they can use uh, large language models to generate text, to generate photos, to create marketing materials, to create advertising campaigns. And I think that the thing that most of us are struggling with at the moment is is this a tool that's really going to make everybody's life more easy and to make people more productive? Or is this a tool that at some level threatens the job security of people in the creative content industry? My sense is that it's a little bit of both, that there are going to be some jobs that can be replaced by certain types of automated processes in the same way that when computer graphics came along, they ended up replacing hand-drawn graphics. And yet at the same time, we're seeing that many people at very different levels of companies and organizations are embracing these tools because it makes them more productive and allows them to do things that they couldn't do before. And to that extent is creating productivity and even enhancing creativity. My sense is that we need to be careful not to regulate the baby before it starts to walk. We really should understand how the new technology is being used in these industries and allow them to fulfill their potential to benefit humans, and yet at the same time not be so disruptive as to uh, create an environment that is, I think, more detrimental to the creative process. I don't think anybody wants that.
We're all going to be learning as we go. Alex Alben, thank you for joining the Responsible AI podcast. It was fun to put you in the other chair.
Rebecca, I really appreciate your questions, and I'm happy to be a guest at the AI Forum, and I encourage others who read this to join us and participate, and we want to hear your views on these topics.
Fantastic. Thanks so much.